Ask anyone for a TV series recommendation, and Breaking Bad will top their list almost every single time. There's a solid reason for that acclaim. This masterpiece has collected countless accolades and stands as one of television's finest achievements, capable of stirring every emotion imaginable. Today, we're diving deep into the twisted and haunting journey of Jesse Pinkman, examining the countless methods used to manipulate him throughout this legendary series. From his exploitation at the hands of his former chemistry teacher turned meth kingpin Walter White, to the deceptive gestures of supposed allies and ruthless adversaries, Jesse's story reveals the devastating impact of manipulation when targeted at someone already broken. So settle in to explore the heartbreaking ways Jesse Pinkman becomes a puppet in Breaking Bad's cruel game. Control defines every human connection. Whether friendships or romantic bonds, control determines who holds the strings and how far those strings can be pulled. The brutal truth of our world is that power isn't distributed equally, creating the unbalanced dynamics we witness daily in human interactions. When storytellers grasp this concept, they can craft fictional narratives that mirror our harsh reality. No series masters this art quite like Breaking Bad does with Jesse Pinkman's tragic manipulation. For those unfamiliar, Breaking Bad chronicles the dark transformation of Walter White, a struggling high school chemistry instructor who morphs into a merciless methamphetamine manufacturer following a terminal cancer diagnosis. Walter partners with his former student Jesse Pinkman to produce and distribute drugs, hoping to secure his family's financial stability. As this duo ventures deeper into the perilous underworld of narcotics, they face mounting consequences and deadly rivals. Breaking Bad masterfully examines themes of morality, family bonds, and authority, while delivering gripping, intellectually provocative television. As Breaking Bad unfolds, Walter's plunge into criminality becomes increasingly irreversible. Each choice sends him spiraling deeper into darkness until his behavior mirrors that of a genuine psychopath.
I'm the cook. That's right. Now, say my name. Heisenberg. You're goddamn right.
Yet despite his growing moral corruption, Walter remains driven by his need for self-preservation and family protection. This compels him to manipulate Jesse with increasing intensity, exploiting his former students' devotion and trust to maintain loyalty and ensure his own survival.
You just give me my money and you and we're done.
As Walter's psychological grip on Jesse tightens, viewers must confront uncomfortable questions about manipulation's boundaries and the psychological damage inflicted on its victims. Now that we've revisited the foundation, let's examine these characters closely and dissect their roles in the manipulative schemes woven throughout Breaking Bad. Starting with Jesse Pinkman, he consistently proves far more complex than audiences initially recognize. Initially, viewers perceive him as merely a drug-addicted failure lacking a moral compass, someone who could only survive by cooking methamphetamine. However, we gradually witness the truly heartbreaking tale of an isolated young man who never received the genuine love and guidance needed to develop into the compassionate, functional adult he should have become. We observe Jesse's artistic passion and the genuine enthusiasm in his expression when discussing his past woodworking projects, proving he possessed real aspirations just like anyone else. We also witness Jesse's emotional depth and how he clings to certain moral standards within the drug trade, demonstrated by him caring for the neglected child in the crack den, perhaps recognizing his younger self in that situation, and his firm opposition to involving children in drug operations. Yet we also see how little genuine affection Jesse receives from those meant to support him during his darkest moments. When Jesse descended into drug dealing and addiction, his parents simply abandoned him, never attempting to reclaim their son, showing us the devastating effects of complete isolation. Jesse subsequently develops a pattern of desperately clinging to anyone showing him even minimal kindness, using this as a coping mechanism for his profound loneliness. He becomes fiercely loyal in these relationships, understanding abandonment intimately and refusing to inflict that pain on others. This makes Jesse remarkably vulnerable to manipulation. In exchange for just a fragment of affection, you gain a devoted and obedient follower. Those who exploit this include obvious enemies like Gus and Hank, but also those masquerading as his closest allies, particularly Walter White. Understanding Jesse, our story's deuteragonist, requires recognizing that none of this character development and insight would be possible without the actions, both physical and psychological, of his trusted mentor, friend, but most significantly, his abuser, Walter White. Walter White serves as the show's protagonist, with the entire narrative revolving around his existence and his deepening involvement in criminal activities. However, considering everything, this story isn't truly about his criminal enterprises, but rather about the ego and character transformation that occurs rapidly, affecting not only his actions but also his underlying motivations. This character evolution works brilliantly because we meet Walter White as an empty shell of a man, a seemingly innocent individual who appears disconnected from life, lacking truly fulfilling experiences. Walter represents the contemporary working man in suburban America, yet Breaking Bad reveals how such men are particularly susceptible to traumatic life changes due to the fragility of having virtually nothing. Ultimately, Walter's future behavior and motivations originate from deep insecurity and persistent emasculation. Simply put, the pilot episode shows us Walter's self-perception as an unpopular, undesirable man. He's an ordinary high school chemistry instructor in a public school, maintaining a traditional nuclear family in Albuquerque suburbs. Moreover, during Walter's birthday celebration and throughout the series, we witness how his own son, Walter Jr., respects and views his own uncle Hank Schrader as more masculine and a superior role model than his actual father. This uncomfortable dynamic, with Walter realizing his son apparently admires another man and acknowledges his accomplishments, reveals Walter's deep hunger for recognition, appreciation, and someone he can influence or mentor. All this culminates in Walter's relationship with his former student Jesse Pinkman. When the series begins, audiences are deceived into misunderstanding the dynamics between Walter and Jesse's partnership. After learning about Walter's cancer diagnosis, we subconsciously view Walter as an even more vulnerable man, weakened by disease with limited time remaining. Therefore, when Walter approaches his drug-dealing former student to establish a business partnership, we're misled into believing Jesse will hold the power and that Walter will be victimized by this uncontrolled junkie dealer. However, the show expertly demonstrates how surprisingly gentle and emotional Jesse's nature is, while simultaneously revealing how disturbed and manipulative the supposedly innocent Walter White can become. By pushing character development boundaries, the story has Walter attempt to dominate Jesse, not only to control his own life, but to become the fully realized version of himself he's always envisioned. Walter's manipulation becomes even more prominent due to its complete unnecessity. Initially, Walter clearly identifies Jesse as incompetent regarding drug manufacturing processes. Walter continuously belittles Jesse for his addiction and repeatedly argues that he contributes no genuine inherent value to their methamphetamine operation beyond his supposed street knowledge. The reason Walter pursues Jesse for his street knowledge should be immediately dismissed as the relationship's foundation, primarily because of Walter's ego. Repeatedly, we see Walter's ego as his fatal weakness. This becomes evident when Walter withdraws from Gray Matter Technologies, a multi-billion-dollar corporation within the show's universe.
Have you heard of a company called Gray Matter? No. Well, I co-founded it in grad school with a couple of friends of mine. Actually, I was the one who named it. And back then, it was just small time. We had a couple patents pending, but nothing earth-shattering. Of course, we all knew the potential. But for personal reasons, I decided to leave the company. And I sold my share to my two partners. I took a buyout for $5,000. Now, at the time, that was a lot of money for me. Care to guess what that company is worth now?
Millions?
Billions, with a B. 2.16 billion as of last Friday. I look it up every week. And I sold my share, my potential, for $5,000.
His reason for abandoning this company and selling his shares for a tiny fraction of their current value stems from a bitter relationship ending. Contrasting the life Walter could have lived had he separated personal feelings from professional objectives, with his current mundane existence as a teacher, demonstrates his destructive ego's extent.
Jesse, you asked me if I was in the meth business or the money business. Neither. I'm in the empire business.
Combined with Elliot and Gretchen's prosperity after controlling the company, compared to Walter's ordinary teaching life, this further illustrates how powerfully his ego influences his decisions, subtly contradicting our initial perception of Walter as rational and objective. Feeding his ego, Walter pursues his partnership with Jesse not for business purposes, but to construct his so-called empire. He wants Jesse present to feel like he's still decent, that he's transforming lives, serving as a mentor, being a superior partner, and most importantly, remaining a good person. Empire typically connects with powerful dynasties, and perversely, Walter abandons his actual family to forge a familial connection with Jesse, one of the few people in his entire life who made him feel influential. Jesse's innocence and naivety help Walter feel more secure in their partnership, finally receiving respect and recognition for his scientific and business knowledge. By finally feeling appreciated for his abilities, Walter becomes intoxicated with the belief that he requires Jesse as he constructs his ego through being a more intelligent and capable mentor. The manipulation aspect insufficiently discussed in this toxic relationship is that as Jesse and Walter venture deeper into the drug business, Jesse encounters more situations that Walter creates for them both, essentially becoming trapped in this endless cycle of being bound to Walter through problems Walter himself creates and then resolves. Due to Jesse's naivety and innocence, he believes he owes Walter, and Jesse's lack of self-confidence combined with absent role models leads him to crave Walter's approval and companionship. The truly disturbing aspect is that Walter recognizes this pattern and deliberately exploits it, making him Jesse's genuine manipulator, an abuser who sees no limits. This dynamic is elegantly illustrated throughout Breaking Bad's narrative, including examples of Brock's poisoning, Gail's murder, and Jane's death. A specific instance of Walter emotionally manipulating and exploiting Jesse for personal gain involves Brock's poisoning. This presents an interesting example since Walter acts from necessity to preserve his own life. He understood that Jesse was growing closer to Gus, which would eventually result in Walter's elimination from the operation. Therefore, this could be considered an extremely shrewd tactical decision rather than purely sociopathic manipulation. However, we view it as both. While it appears highly logical, that's precisely the problem. It's extremely logical with minimal emotional consideration. Walter must terrify Jesse into believing his involvement in the methamphetamine trade caused Brock's poisoning, which is tremendously unfair to burden someone with. He then completely distorts the situation he fabricated, making it appear as though Gus poisoned Brock, essentially serving as Jesse's puppet master.
Jesse, who do you know? Who's allowed children to be murdered? Gus! Think about it! It's brilliant!
I'm going to do this one way or another, Mr. White.
Then let me help.
He successfully manipulates Jesse back to his side by completely exploiting what he knows represents one of Jesse's vulnerabilities, his protectiveness towards children. Another method Walter maintains his iron grip and control over Jesse's psyche occurs at Jesse's first love, something incredibly precious to anyone. Love creates extreme emotional vulnerability, opening people to depths they never imagined possible. Jesse's inexperience in youth obviously led him to become completely infatuated with Jane, and he valued her opinions tremendously. Walter recognized this and realized it provided another voice influencing Jesse's decisions, threatening Walter's complete dominance over Jesse. For instance, Jane convinced Jesse to flee and use hard drugs, which severely impacted Walter and Jesse's business. Since Walter realized he no longer maintained absolute control over Jesse because Jane began acting as an influence, he allowed Jane to die from an overdose while being completely capable of saving her. This eliminates Jane as a threat to his power dynamic with Jesse. He then comforts Jesse to appear trustworthy and caring, building trust that Walter knows he can exploit later. An interesting manipulation method Walter employs involves referring to their business arrangements as a partnership rather than a cook and assistant relationship.
It's more than an assistant. Partners. We'll be partners again. Split everything 50-50, just like before.
Clearly visible in the show's early seasons, Walter obviously commits to this business, demonstrated by Walter treating the work far more seriously than Jesse. This creates the aforementioned toxic codependency and further reinforces Walter's belief that he doesn't necessarily need Jesse, but maintains the partnership illusion when Walter actually wants and will continue viewing Jesse as a subordinate he can exploit.
From that 35% than you ever would on your own.
Although Jesse appears elevated to Walter's partner status, in Walter's mind, he means nothing compared to the great Heisenberg, which only encourages Jesse to idolize Walter and remain dependent on him. On Walter's side, when Walter mentions a job opening in their operation, Jesse quickly refuses. But Walter, who sees Jesse as more than just a partner, but someone he exploits to boost his self-confidence, quickly modifies his offer, proposing Jesse a partnership position, needing Jesse's accompaniment.
There's been a job opening. I need a new lab assistant.
Oh, gee, thanks. Oh, not interested.
There's more. It's more than an assistant. Partners. We'll be partners again. Split everything 50-50, just like before.
We witness Walter's grip on Jesse in numerous instances. When Walter convinces Jesse to murder Gail, we see Jesse crying, and how powerfully Aaron Paul conveys Jesse's emotional distress and trauma from this incident. Most other deaths he could justify as eliminating bad people, but Dale was genuinely nice and awkward. Someone who didn't want Jesse or Walter dead. It was simply a selfish act to preserve Walter's life at another man's expense. We also observe Jesse's multiple breakdowns resulting from Walter's abuse. After discovering Walter lied about poisoning Brock, Jesse completely breaks down and attempts to burn down his house. We then see him sobbing and screaming he can't keep getting away with this, referring to Walter's constant deception and manipulation tactics. Jesse realizes he's being manipulated repeatedly, hoping Walter finally faces punishment. At the show's conclusion, we see Jesse driving away from Jack's compound, screaming in the car. Jesse finally releases the emotions he accumulated throughout his relationship with Walt, a sad yet satisfying scene witnessing Jesse's freedom from his former puppet master. However, even with Walter's complete manipulation and control of Jesse, did he still care for him? This makes their relationship so fascinating. It's constantly changing and evolving. Walter performs many actions for what he perceives as the ultimate greater good for both himself and Jesse, always including Jesse and refusing to let him die. This creates an extremely engaging dynamic as our opinions of their relationship constantly shift, keeping the show tremendously compelling. Essentially, much of Jesse's manipulation he endures results from lacking self-awareness and confidence. By placing himself in environments perpetuating mediocrity and cyclical behavior, he becomes trapped. Simultaneously, the show and Gilligan pose the question, how easy is escaping this cycle? Jesse may be addicted to drugs, but ultimately, like everyone else in the world, Jesse is more addicted to others' affection, respect, and validation. He doesn't deserve to be such a pawn in Breaking Bad's intense and heartbreaking chess game. Thank you for watching our analysis.